All right, man, we'll just jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Canberk, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Just to get started, so I know we've talked before, probably a year ago.
Yeah.
Just want to get everybody a little bit acquainted with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from originally?
100%. Well, I'm originally from Turkey. I was born and raised in a city called Izmir in the west of Turkey. And then we moved to Istanbul and Izmir. But then I made a move to Israel when I was 15. So I went to a boarding school there. And after finishing the school, I decided Canada was the place I wanted to go for like my university degree. So I came here, I did my electrical and computer engineering. But especially by the end of my degree, I kind of realized I was more into like other things than engineering.
Right.
But long story short, my journey started from Turkey and then Israel. And then here we are in Halifax right now.
Amazing. So where did you do your education?
So for my university degree, I went to Dalhousie. So I did first 2 years just generic engineering, and then I specialized in electrical and computer engineering. And as a part of that, I got pretty involved with like some of the technical sides of like what we are doing right now, or like what we might be doing later on as well.
And kind of what drew you into those types of fields? Like, you started in one area and you kind of moved over to the electrical. What was kind of the attraction in that sphere of engineering?
Well, to me, engineering has always been something that I felt passionate about. But then when I was in boarding school in Israel, we had the robotics club where I was involved with like, some projects related to like robots and what they called FRC back at the time. And then when I came here, I was like, that's definitely something I want to like explore more and see if that's something I want to do for like the long run. That's why I got into electrical first. But then people in Nova Scotia in the engineering field, they would know Dalhousie has the computer option under electrical. So I was like, it's good, but electrical is more about hardware. Right. But I wanted to do something that's more open-ended for like software side of the things. That's why I took on the computer option too. So it was definitely tough, 4 years plus 1 year co-op. But I'm glad, we finished it all. And then I've been seeing like so much value out of that program for sure.
Amazing. So like in the computer portion of that program, would that be, no pun intended, but would it be more programming based? Would you have learned some coding and some different?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I had some background in like some object oriented like C, C++ and like even some Python like back in high school.
I actually have a certification level 1 in Python. Just very introductory. Like I can make like, equal print hello world. Like that's like basically.
That's where you start.
Right?
That's where everybody starts.
But I do have the certificate somewhere. I found it the other day. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, carry on.
But yeah, that's a great one because similar, since I had like some fundamentals, then at Dalhousie here, they also teach you things around like object oriented because it's engineering.
Of course.
But then when you declare your major as like computer option, you get to take classes from computer science faculty, which enabled me to take some like operating system courses and like some other courses that were more like programming related. So those were the ones to like expose me more into that. But I cannot say I can like program in anywhere close to a computer science grad. I do have the knowledge and the basics and I can, like understand what's going on, but a CS grad would be so much more capable in coding, just like how I would be more capable for electrical and like hardware components.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I can't program at all. And it's funny though, I do know a friend of ours, my wife's good friend, she works for Google. Mm-hmm. And she said like most of her job is looking on GitHub and Googling the solution to her problems anyway. So she said most programmers can't code to start with. They just always are looking up problems. I mean, I shouldn't say that.
Open source.
A lot of it is looking up people's work that's done what you're looking to do and then just applying it to, the problem to solve, X.
That's the beauty of it, especially GitHub with so much open source projects happening. Like sometimes all you need is the idea and find the fundamentals and then you just customize on top of it and create your own, obviously by respecting those open source resources. But
yeah, that's funny. That's a common area of interest. Obviously, the world is moving towards, everything's very programming based, apps, websites, online, social media. AI, making different systems and making things more efficient, which is one of the portions that I like the most about technology is really refining and making things more efficient day to day. Switching gears a little bit. So I know we both have very similar backgrounds, and it's kind of something that I think is kind of how we almost found each other, doing very similar things with our background, but like left our old roles. Some of us got forced out, other voluntarily left. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, like post undergrad? Where did you end up after university?
Yeah. Well, during that time of exploring during my degree about what I want to do, I was actually working for Procter & Gamble. So I went to Ontario. They have a plant in Belleville in Ontario. And I worked for them as a part of their like North America logistics operation. So in that plant, they manufacture all the Always branded like feminine care pad. And what we were doing was handling all the logistics behind it in terms of like shipping and distribution in North America. So I worked as a part of like logistics and operations team. But then after working there and like finishing my degree, I realized what we did there in terms of logistics and the concept itself was very interesting to me. But doing that as a part of corporate culture was not something that really made me feel like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Instead, I was always very involved during at school as well in terms of like entrepreneurship, and like I was leading the entrepreneurship society at Dalhousie. So I said, you know what, this was a great learning. And as my full-time commitment right now, I want to take what I learned and then apply it in the micro scale at the local ecosystem rather than at like the macro scale for like the, like the corporate level.
Right.
That's why I started my own startup, which is called Haligone. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years and counting. Yeah.
Amazing. So what do you think in like, when we look at the corporate sector, what do you think is some of the things that you found you enjoyed about it?
Yeah.
And then what do you feel like are a few things that, made you go this other direction where you felt you wanted to kind of dive into the macro in a more city specific or geographic specific area?
Yeah. Well, it's amazing, especially at a place like Procter & Gamble, how they have the playbook on things, they do well when it comes to operation, what I was involved with. But also I realized in a place like that, once you get in, there's really good job security. I'm like, it's a great place to work and it's a great place for you to grow as a person. But the playbook was there. So I really felt like intrigued with the idea of how that playbook was created back in the time. Like, how did they make it? So I really wanted to, take that step myself. It's a big risk, right? So you might be successful, you might not be successful. But at that point of my life, I said, I'm just a recent grad and I have this experience that I can build on top, or maybe I can go work for 10 years and then try it. But to me, it felt like if I didn't do it at that point, I would have regretted. And that's one thing with me. I don't like thinking about things and then just trying to make myself, blind those. I said, I'm just going to do it because I want to learn how the process of creating a playbook works, if we can at all. So it started as like a little initiative between me and one of my friends from Procter & Gamble, one of my colleagues there. And then, later on, I became the sole, like the entrepreneur in the business who's been like taking it from those stages until where we are right now, pretty much.
Awesome. So one thing I'm always interested in is, you're very young. Do you mind me asking how, or telling the folks how old you are?
Yeah. So I was born in 98.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's, when I just look back at, I'm a little bit older than you. And when I look back at my time in university, and I have a similar background that I think I've touched on before in consumer goods with Unilever, I just, at that age, I didn't feel like I was mature enough to make that leap. For example, I was interested in real estate back then. I graduated in 2011. And at that time, I just felt like, the only thing that 22-year-old Chris had on his mind was paying rent and partying with his friends on the weekend. So,
and there's nothing wrong with
right?
It. Yeah.
So I was very much kind of steered away from that. And I don't know if you call that, maybe, my upbringing. It was like, go to university, get a good job, get a pension. And that was kind of the route I went when it was presented to me that, you had to hustle and grind. And at 22, looking back, wouldn't say I regret it, but maybe if I looked a little bit harder at it. But so did you have the support at home? How did they feel about you going in with like a tier one CPG company, doing your internship, and then kind of being like, nah, I'm just going to do my own thing and kind of go all in on this? Like, how was that received at home or from the folks? Do you care to expand?
I have to say, Chris, that's a really good question. Because pretty much 8 months before I graduated, I already had an offer from P&G to go there as a full-time.
Amazing.
And
not surprising.
At that point, it could have been just like, and I said it so many times, and I really appreciate my managers there too. We kept in touch, and I told them, I was very straight up. I was like, look, I'm about to graduate, and I really appreciate the offer, and I really like to work here, but I do want to take this path to myself. And my manager at that time, like Chris, his name was Chris.
Oh, okay.
He's a great guy. So he told me, he was like, you know what? One day you're probably going to be at the chair that I'm sitting right now. And what matters is what you want to do, what you think is right. He was like, go for it. But if at any point it doesn't work out or something goes in a different direction, let me know. So I really respected that. But when I talked to my parents too, they've always been very supportive. I think from what I shared in the beginning of this conversation as well, me going to Israel and when I was 15, that was also another big decision.
Right.
Of just saying, hey, I'm taking off. But I am born and raised in Turkey, and I'm Muslim, and I'm going to a Jewish country, which is great. It's a different experience. But at the same time, it's not something you see often, I would say.
A little outside the norm.
Yeah, so they were very supportive at that point and in this decision as well. With my parents, that's one thing I always appreciate. My family too, they said, you know what, we respect your decision. So if you want to go for it, go for it. We will support it in a way we can. But I made sure I was still on my own independently to make that decision and go for it. Long story short, I would say I couldn't say thanks enough for my parents, my sister here. Everybody has been pretty supportive.
That's awesome.
In terms of this decision, and I'm doing my best to make sure we're just going above and beyond on this decision. And it's been 2 years, right? So something has been working for sure. That's we can still keep going on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it was pretty apparent even when I first met and sat down with you that
thank you.
You definitely had a plan, and you were focused and determined to make it work. And I mean, obviously your folks seen that. And that's where the support comes from. So I mean, when you see someone really grinding, I mean,
thanks, man.
You got to give them that support. Absolutely. And I fortunate at home as well, tons of support. So it's awesome to have parents that really look out for you. So we're very fortunate in that sense.
And that's the thing, right? First day we chatted, that's once you really clicked with me by talking with you as well. Just seeing you and your personal entrepreneurial journey and sharing all these mindset together. And also, once again, thanks for having me here, just sharing the story with everybody.
Yeah, man. No, I think it's important, especially a lot of people don't know. I don't think I've mentioned it on the show, but I had a little seafood peddling business.
Yeah.
And that's originally how we got to meet, because Haligone, and we haven't really got right into it, but I think it's a good segue.
Yeah.
Logistically, I needed some more reach. At first, my business was taking orders on my website. I have a couple pickup points, and I could only be so many places physically at once. Also, at the same time, I was trying to get my real estate business going, studying and so on. And then I realized that, no offense to that side business, but my time was better suited and focused on the real estate side.
Yeah.
I just did the math. It started off as a bit of a retirement project for my father, but, he retired and, got interested in other things, and it just kind of fizzled out. Yeah. But that's where I tried to engage you at the end. COVID put some pretty tough parameters around, my business due to pricing and cost of goods and margins. So, but I mean, I couldn't say enough good about your service. I mean, to be able to have somebody pick it up, I packaged it, and it goes out start to finish and gets to the customer. I just found it was a phenomenal product, service, nothing like I've experienced here. So that kind of segues into my next topic is, you're working with Procter, you're not really feeling that full time. You know, you got the offer, you're like, thanks, but no thanks. And also I want to highlight that anybody that has a manager that's going to encourage and support ideas like that those are the types of people you want to work for. Anybody that's not really, you know, giving you the time of day or really, you know, supporting those ideas is, I think, really in management for potentially the wrong reasons. So when did you see the white space? When did you see the opportunity for Haligone to come into existence? And two-parter, you give me a really good kind of clear picture of your view on the world and all that. Why did you end up in Halifax? So, couple questions.
Good.
When did the white space kind of pop into your mind that you're like, we got to get in here?
Yeah.
And then out of all places, you know, obviously you're in Israel.
Yeah.
You're from Turkey.
Yeah.
You know, you shared with me that you've traveled a country for every year you've been on this earth.
Until I was 21.
Until you're 21. And then you landed here. So I think it's important for us to kind of, you know, tell the people, you know, why Halifax?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So let me just put my thoughts together.
Sure.
So I think I'm going to start from the Halifax part and then
work our way back,
dive into like Haligone.
Sure.
Because like you said, I had that goal of like visiting as many countries as my age. And it wasn't necessarily one a year because I was living in Turkey. It's easier to fly to Europe,
right?
Visit multiple countries all at once. But I went to like, you know, like South America and like Asia too. But then when I was finishing my degree, I mean my like high school diploma in Israel, which was also that IB program we have in Canada too. So Canada was one of those countries that always like popped out to me regarding their like immigration processes and like you know, life standards and like the business opportunities in the US and like Europe. So I was considering multiple places, but I have to say back in the time I was in a, you know, relationship for about 2 years and she was from Canada and I had a chance to visit Canada before coming here. And when I visited here, I got to see like the life and the people and how everything works. And we did some campus tours in like McGill. And then I applied to all the schools. So Dalhousie was one of those schools that I saw as like a really good potential because as an international student, when you apply, it's not just how good the school is, it's also like the scholarships and like how we can afford it and like the ranking of the school. So Dal was one of those schools when you compare with the other like top names like McGill and U of T, it was, you know, so much more affordable and it's still up there and it has so much potential to take you to where you want to be. So, and I'm a kind of person who doesn't believe as much in like the titles and the names. It's rather what you make out of the resources you have.
Absolutely.
So I came to Dal and like I was saying, to connect that to Haligone, I was leading the Entrepreneurship Society. Then the university gave me a chance, and I don't think I shared this with you before. They gave me a chance to represent Dal like at Stanford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's an honor.
It was a pretty good experience because they pretty much like compensated me and like another like entrepreneur student from Dal to go to like San Francisco. And we spent like some time like in Stanford just working and becoming a part of a fellowship program. And then we came back and by representing that program, we just involved like the startup ecosystem and did so much work like in Halifax by holding workshops. And then the Haligone itself became more like apparent to me in terms of that white space you're mentioning, more like the summer of 2020, which was literally before like the pandemic happened. Like it was right around that time, like things were starting to ramp up and I knew that this was the space I wanted to be involved in. And then when I saw things were getting, you know, bad, I was like, oh, this is not going to be good, but I'm trying to keep myself optimistic and maybe this might be a good time if I were to actually initiate what I'm thinking on my mind. So that's what happened. Without any like financing investment whatsoever, just bootstrapping. I was like, I'm just diving right into it. And yeah, so I applied for a program within school because I was still finishing up my degree. Like when I started Haligone, it was the last term. And Dalhousie like supported us for like one summer term, which was a program where you learn about entrepreneurship. But then as a part of that program, I did like the business plan and stuff like that. And then we launched the business. We simply just, you know, paid for like incorporation fees and then started talking to businesses. And then organically, like one customer, second customer, you know, 5th, 10th, 20th, 40th. And yeah, we got to the point that we are at today. So like I said, it didn't happen because the pandemic was here, but it was definitely a big trigger for us to see that opportunity and like to get it like initiated. It's been a great journey so far, but that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of, and that's an amazing story. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of businesses, unfortunately, either crumble because of the pandemic, or some have kind of flourished and kind of come out of, rose up more so. So that's awesome. And I mean, I had another guest, Ed, that his business also kind of catapulted from the pandemic. So, I mean, you know, they say there's no time like the present to kind of jump in and, you know, fortunately a bad situation kind of turned out, you know, good because there was a lot of demand for contactless delivery. And, you know, there was a lot of uncertainty in terms of what was going on. So I'm glad to hear that all worked out. So for those that are probably still wondering, can you kind of give us kind of a rundown? I mean, I was really impressed with the whole system as a consumer to use the service. Can you tell us a little bit about Haligone and what your service is and who it's primarily for?
100%. Well, about that white space, right? Like the real gap that we saw wasn't that people just needed deliveries, and it wasn't that people need contactless deliveries. It was more so people need a whole new look into how deliveries are handled, and like that experience, like, you know, like your customers as a business owner, like go through. And it's not just about getting a package from point A to B, and it's how you do it. So as a part of our system, what we offer is we work with small to medium-sized retailers, as well as like larger companies like Decathlon, and like we also serve for companies like Home Depot, Citco, Marsh, like some bigger corporate names too. But what we do is we act as a delivery like integration software that enables these businesses to have our fleet under their operation without actually needing to hire drivers. We provide Amazon-like features to local retailers where they can have their e-commerce website working alongside with our system. It takes less than 30 seconds for a retailer to place in a delivery request with us. They don't have to email, they don't have to call, and we work like 7 days a week. So I'm just going to give you an example for a business owner. If they have like their, let's say, Shopify site, and they have so many like orders coming in, they could be a virtual or like a brick and mortar store. Then when they use Haligone, we provide them a service where every single package that is inputted to our system by 12 p.m. at noon, 7 days a week, we guarantee delivery by 6 p.m. the same day. And we include areas like Peggy's-Co, Enfield, you know, like Eastern Passage, some of the farther areas, but the same day delivery. And then we don't have anything like the traditional couriers would have, like no fuel surcharge, no like mileage fees and things like that. It's a very simple system. It's tier-based, and it's always like flat pricing. People know cent by cent what they pay. But I'm just going to come to the most important point. Because when we started, we wanted to take an approach more like creating Uber-like system, but for retail only. And I'm talking about like 2.5 years ago.
Right.
And on that note, we're only working with retailers like who have like, you know, primary like non-perishable goods.
Right.
Like with your business, that was one of the
different.
One of like the new initiatives, like new projects for us, because we were like, yeah, you know, it's definitely perishable food, but there are certain things we can do by working with the business owner if they're willing to work with us to make it work. We're open for new things. But yeah, in our system, the thing that matters the most for businesses is that tracking ability we provide with the software.
That's the best part.
Yeah. So yeah, I know it took a little bit to get there, but so in this part, I actually want to clarify what we do, because as many people who watch right now, they would know when you order a food for delivery, you can usually go on the app and like track and see where the driver is. But that's usually not the case when you order, you know, a pack of socks from a local retailer, let's say like in Bedford.
Right.
What you expect is you order it, and you usually expect that to come in maybe in 2 or 3 days.
Right.
If they have same day delivery, it will come, but it's usually a surprise. It just pops up at the door.
Yeah, you can't be there ready or, you know, say you need to sign or anything like that.
Yeah, because you also don't expect the local retailer to invest like, you know, thousands of dollars into a whole like a software system and like have that operation running. But when they work with Haligone, the capability we give is the moment our drivers pick up the packages and head your way as the customer who bought the product, we send you a link. It's customized. It says, and I'm going to drop some names from some of our partner retailers too.
Yeah.
Let's say, your package from like Rousseau Chocolatier is on the way to you, and then there's a link. And the moment you click, we have a custom like interface that's branded for Rousseau Chocolatier, and it says your driver is at this location. And you can see on the map live, like second by second, like minute by minute, where the driver is, the ETA, what time they'll be there, contact number if you have questions around it. And then you have full visibility. It's seamless as the buyer. The business also has that. And on top, we provide like data analytics like interface for businesses where they can see like their historical deliveries, make like strategies around like what the behavior of their customers are, and like all these like premium value added features all included within our flat pricing. So yeah, so I want to be nicer to your microphone.
It's all good, man. They can take some abuse.
But I guess what I want to mention here is we're really trying to take an approach here from more like technology and like innovation perspective to the experience of the customers rather than just dropping packages from point A to B. And where I believe like my background as an engineer becomes handy because, I've been like building like that entire, piece of software that handles like the businesses to submit orders and then all the interaction for day-to-day operation. But then we also have, in the beginning, we've been outsourcing a part of our software for the drivers where we can like send them to like separate pickups and like optimize the route for them. And right now, that's a part of our next phase of the business where we will be owning the IP for that software as well, because we are preparing for a pre-seed round. And as a part of that, we will be building the app for the drivers on our own. And after that point, it's just going to be the next phase of growth we are preparing. I would say first 2 years, it's been learning, growing, and having a really strong clientele in Halifax. And now the upcoming years will be the time to scale even like outside of Halifax. That's where we're heading.
I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned about the software and the tracking. And I mean, I just want to let people know, like I used it. And the most impressive part for me is to your point about your service. You order something, even Amazon.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it'll be here by Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And you might click the link and it might update that they picked it up from Amazon and it's in transit.
Yeah.
But you don't really have that visibility. And for me, I mean, we used it a short time before I had to kind of refocus my time. But I mean, I had a ton of positive feedback. Because people would know like when they had to be home, if they wanted to be there to receive it. They didn't have to either. Yeah. There was a picture. They knew when it got picked up. They could see where it was midway through. Yeah. How you say you were going to own the IP for that software, and I was thinking about it when you were talking. Yeah. Is that all driven through a third-party application right now, and they have it on their phone, or how is the actual live tracking happening, or is that maybe kind of the trade secret?
Well, yeah, so and by the way, we're pretty much the only company right now in Nova Scotia, like who can provide like that level of visibility as a part of delivery tracking. Because like you said, right, people are not used to that. And it's not only about tracking either, Chris. When the package is dropped, that picture proof, like we also make sure like that's sent not only for the business, but also for the customer. So if you were at work, and you put a note, let's say, to drop it, near the front step, then you would see the picture, it's actually there, and then you would have that confirmation as the customer too. And I was saying, right, so we've been a bootstrapped business. That's why in the software piece too, we had to be really creative and like resourceful, because I didn't have millions of dollars to pour into like senior developers to come in and build the software, because building software is not the hard part. Like, you can always have the developers and the good team to build it. But we also, like I was mentioning, saw the first 2 years like experimenting and seeing what our businesses really care about. So I made a deal with a different startup in Montreal, and we got this custom software like pretty much like for our business. And as a part of that, I did not have to pour in like millions of dollars, but with the deal, we are able to provide the software to our clients right now, fully under Haligone's umbrella. And it's been a very meaningful partnership because there is no other like business that can provide the level of experience we are providing right now in Nova Scotia. So with us strategically getting that in-house and like having the entire IP under Haligone, and then also, we've been really careful about the sustainability efforts. So Haligone has been the first company to use electric vehicles in Nova Scotia. Yeah, as a part of our like pilot program with Halifax Partnership. We did that pilot last year, and in the next phase of business, we're going to be heavily focusing into like green delivery options and like offsetting like GHGs and like not even offsetting, just eliminating that from the process with some of the new, what you would call like the trade secret parts that we will have in the next phase. But that's a part of that like investment round we are raising to take the business to a like software and product heavy direction rather than having like 50-50 service and product.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm all for like, Ed's kind of doing his part on, reducing the carbon footprint on the earth, Unilever. One great thing about them that I always admired is they were always making efforts to, be greener, reduce their carbon footprint, use less plastics, more recyclables, less perishable stuff. And, obviously if we're looking long term for this planet, I mean, we definitely, there's a balancing act, but we definitely have to keep an eye on that. So I'm happy to hear that you are. In terms of like the electric vehicles, were they, with the Halifax partnership, was it any specific, or was it just electric in general? Were they in-house, or were you kind of leasing them out? Or
Yeah, so it was a pilot program that we ran with business improvement districts in Halifax. So we had like downtown Dartmouth, downtown Halifax, Queenpool, and like a few other business districts all together. And so what we did was we had partners, including Halifax Partnership and like Chamber of Commerce sponsored it too, and then All EV, which is currently acquired by Steel. So they gave us the vehicles. It was like Chevy Bolts, and then we used the vehicle to like offset half a ton of like greenhouse gases in the matter of like a few weeks just by using one vehicle. And then the concept was to prove that out, that it can be done, and to create awareness, not just for us, but, I also want the other like companies, like courier companies, to have that awareness.
Adopted.
Which they did. And then we have seen like multiple other companies like making moves, they might have thought about it maybe before, maybe, they were going to make it. But then I think having seen somebody initiating and executing it, which was Haligone at the time, really like made that, huge step, not only for our business, but also for that like ecosystem in Halifax. But yeah, so our model, we don't own vehicles, like we don't buy vehicles. That's why they weren't in-house. We work with the drivers as independent contractors.
Gotcha.
So they would have to have their own vehicles. But as a part of this like phase we are getting into, we're going to be including like people who like own EVs and like other type of vehicles to help minimize like carbon like emissions as a part of the operation.
Awesome. And you mentioned, that's great. Yeah. And you mentioned you were tracking and you seen that you had reduced some of the greenhouse gas emissions. Can you kind of speak to how you were tracking some of these kind of KPIs?
Yeah. So that always depends on the specific car you use as well, because for every single car that we were dealing with, we had that like pretty much conversion about how much carbon would be like, getting out of this operation per kilometer.
Oh, wow.
So, and then what we were doing is, so today, let's say a driver who was, using that car drove for like 200 kilometers, and then we would time that mileage with the, carbon, the total carbon we say per kilometer, and then we would get it on a daily basis. So after we get that on a daily basis, we just made our graphs for like daily, weekly, monthly, and then that's what we provided back to Halifax Partnership.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Next question. You guys have been doing some awesome work with some local retailers here in Halifax. You've kind of let me know that there's some innovation coming down the pipe, that you're looking at some other spheres to get into. Can you speak to kind of what's up next for Haligone and what you're looking to move into, expand into?
Yeah, 100%. So currently we have a really strong team of like advisors who are people from different backgrounds. We have people from academia, people who have like founded and like sold, like exited businesses in the past, or like people who have been like rooted in the government for like sustainability projects. And our common goal is to take the company from where it's at right now, because right now I would say we're 50% service company, 50% product, maybe actually even more like 60% service, 40% like product. What I mean by product is pretty much a software-led like software company. But where we will be going is we're going to create this model where we will enable people to move packages for the planet. And what I mean by that is within this model, I won't be getting too much into specifics, but pretty much we're approaching it more from a social impact and like a shared economy model perspective, where, like I was saying, we won't be owning the vehicles, but people within our communities will be able to be a part of this. Instead of being only a B2B like business, we're going to open it up to like other customers at the B2C level. And as a result of this, our app that we are building will be supporting that expansion. And then we will be taking company from service-led to a product-led approach, where we believe is going to be the real difference to scale it in the other cities, because we want Haligone to be operational like all over Canada in the upcoming years. It's not going to be easy. We have some ambitious goals, but we had to prove our product market fit, which was what we did for the first 2 years. And now we are ready to like take it to that next phase.
Man, that's amazing. That's all great stuff. So one thing that kind of resonates to me when I kind of think about the model that you kind of put forward, would you say it's kind of safe? I mean, I don't want to kind of ride off their coattails because you're doing something very unique, but it just kind of comes to my mind. Are you kind of looking to build an ecosystem where it's essentially like people can be Uber drivers for packages and getting them from point A to point B in an ecological kind of fashion?
Well, yeah, I try to be careful when we try to make it similar to this business or like that business, because
that's why. Yeah.
But in the end of the day, you're absolutely right thinking about what the model could look like from an outsider perspective. But deep down, what we will create is not going to be a part-time job for people. Like that's one thing I could say, because we don't want people who will be a part of this like next phase of the business. We don't want them to feel like, hey, this is my part-time job and I'll be doing it, let's say between like 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then I'm going to dedicate time for it. We're really going to make it in a way that it's going to be such an accessible like product on people's phones, where they could just use it as a part of their like daily lives. And then so that's the thing. I want to talk about it, but at the same time, I need to limit it to a certain extent, because as we're talking, we're building that as well, which is not public yet.
Yep.
But what I can say is, in that model, we will pretty much have not only EV owners, not only like cyclists, people even who use like public transportation, and like people who can walk around, to be able to like contribute to this social impact we're talking about. And what we're going to do is, we're not going to just do deliveries. We're going to use deliveries as a tool to make that impact. So that will be our tool to help reduce greenhouse gases at the mass level.
That's awesome. So basically, the more dense a population is, or denser a city is, the more applications that this service will be able to kind of take form. So whether they're going down the road on their electric scooter with a pack full of bags for you guys, or whatever, but they're essentially a Haligone distributor, not part-time, full-time, whether they're doing it on foot in their local city, or if they're using their EV or their car, they are a Haligone distributor.
And like our goal is not for people to treat it as like this is my part-time job once again, but we will try to get into more like a gamification concept, where people can really see the impact they make, right? So we want people to understand, hey, if they do this much task under our platform, then they will be able to see how much, let's say, trees they helped save, like maybe how much cars they took off the road just by doing what they did. And it's not only going to be about, hey, we are delivering packages. So if anybody's interested at all to know more about what's going to happen, like they should definitely look at us from like our LinkedIn page and or connect with me directly, because there's not much that we are sharing about this, but within the upcoming months, I would say within the next 2 quarters, Like we will be like piloting some of the parts of this in Halifax.
Okay.
And if everything goes well, within 8 to 12 months, we should be at a good point to make our first public like pilot in Halifax for that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So obviously the business name's Haligone, primarily focused right here in Halifax, HRM. Do you have any aspirations of growing the business outside of, Halifax, Nova Scotia? I mean, I know it's concentrated to the city.
Yeah.
Do you have aspirations of reaching other ends of the province, other provinces, other cities?
Yeah. We are actually in the process of like rebranding the business to get it ready for that expansion we are talking about. So the business itself, the name Haligone, which, I love it. We're all Haligonians here.
I called you.
Yeah. It's a great, like a local name. It clicks.
Yeah.
But like in the end of the day, since, when we started it, it was more like, hey, let's see where we can take it. We didn't spend much time about making the greatest like brand name out there.
It's more about the service.
We were more about execution, service, making people happy, creating that tight like clientele. And that's why I did not go for any investments whatsoever until now. We pretty much created a machine, Chris, that can like break even from like the first year and second year. And then you put $1 in, you get $1 out, and like vice versa. And like that's what we try to figure out. So right now with our expansion plans, that's not really what we can do just by bootstrapping and going nationwide. So we need some sort of fuel to support that. That's why our like eyes are in like expansion toward the west right now, to the provinces like, some of the main cities like Toronto in Ontario.
Naturally.
And like some like other like prime cities, and then down to the US. But of course we want to prove it in Canada first. And with the model that I shared like bits and pieces of, like we're really confident within the next year we can get it to a point where we make our like first expansion. But yeah, so for now we just need to focus on our pre-seed. With pre-seed, we're going to be getting full in-house IP and then building the app. And then with that app, we want to go full on to, growing the business there.
Man, it sounds like you guys got a lot on your plate at Haligone.
Lots of things, yeah. No shortage of things.
Right? Yeah. Amazing. And just another segue, you're also a little bit in, pivoting off of Haligone before we wrap things up, you're also got a bit of an aspiration to be a real estate investor.
Yeah.
We chatted about that our last coffee there. How's that process been going? How have you experienced that?
Well, it's been good. And I think in my experience, perhaps even for people who are listening to this, as an immigrant, let's say, newbie real estate, investor, I had to go through a process where I questioned things like, hey, do I need my PR, which is like my permanent residency or not? If I have it, what are the conditions or not? But we were able to close our deal, like the first house, back in December. And we did the renovations within the past 2 months. And just yesterday, the pictures are taken and we are going to like post it within the upcoming week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you got it done.
Yeah.
A little bit of red tape, but you got through it.
Yeah. Lots of learning there as well. But yeah, we wanted to buy a place where we could do some like small like renovation, like get it look pretty and actually make it pretty, and then like rent it out as an investment property. So that's what we are focusing on right now. But I have to say, we thought that was just modest amount of work, and like once you get into it, and since it was my first experience, having a few contractor friends definitely help.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know how big a job is until you really get in there and start tearing stuff apart. And there's always a few surprises that really kind of hold you back. Trust me, I know. Did a whole renovation here and, had to fix a few things. And the more you start saying yes to fixes beyond the scope of what the renovation was, the more expensive it gets.
You know what? I actually learned something from our work so far with this house. The last 10% of the renovation is the one it takes the longest, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're thinking about details. If you're a detail-oriented person like myself, you're like, what about this? What about that? Maybe you planned yourself to be done in 2 days. That becomes a week easily.
Oh, yeah.
So just something to be careful if any other first-time buyers are getting in this.
Oh, absolutely. demo and like framing and like the meat and potatoes, like the bones, like that pretty well goes up like pretty quick. But then when you get into the fine details and like, you know, cabinets, bathrooms, plumbing, you know, it all takes time. So, but I'm glad your guys' experience with that's been a positive one.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great little spot to wrap things up. I really appreciate you coming on. As always, great conversation. Always look forward to having a chat. I'd love to have you on again when we have some updates on Haligone and how things are going with your funding and your whole innovation package that you're looking at getting ongoing and expansion. So, thanks again. I hope everybody, took something from this. And I think you should give Ed a call.
Yeah. I would love a chat.
Yeah. He definitely needs to get his products out to people because he has some great ones. So that would definitely be a great connection. I'll make that happen.
And if there's anybody else like watching that they think our services could be valuable, like I'm happy to connect.
Absolutely. That reminds me, where can they find you? You mentioned LinkedIn, website. Do you want to throw that out there?
Yeah. So like my LinkedIn, I'm really active. Like, they can follow our LinkedIn page as well. But then if they want to like contact, our team, it's like info@haligone.com.
Okay.
Or like me personally, it's just my name and last name, like johnberg.ball@haligone.com.
Awesome.
By the way, go ahead.
Just www.haligone.com.
Yeah, it's www.haligone.com.
And LinkedIn is Haligone as well.
And LinkedIn is just Haligone.
Perfect.
Yeah, so, they can follow us there. And with all these updates and exciting like next steps, we will be like sharing like more through those channels too.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be following along and I'm looking forward to having you back on.
Perfect.
Thanks again. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Have a great one.
You too.